Hello everyone, how are you all? We are here today with a lovely little video because they just posted a new below decks post on the Steam page for DRG, which is a really pleasant surprise. I've been wanting one of these for quite a while now. Not quite a while, but I've been wondering if we would get another one anytime soon. And we did, and I hope this is a sign of more to come in the next half a year to a year where things aren't going to be particularly lively. Either way, I just want to put in a quick note about what you're looking at right now, and that this is a collage of fan art that is used in the post. And obviously it has the credits in it, but I was a little bit uncertain if this is like an okay thing to do because I'm just very unpracticed and unaware of sort of the etiquette surrounding copyright and sort of crediting and whatnot. I know basic stuff like you don't just play someone's video on your video, and you definitely don't leave during it either. But I thought this was a fun little idea because they put this in. I thought it was appropriate as the background for the video. Of course, it's going to be primarily, dominated by this window, so I don't think it's too much of an issue. But if it is, I would love a heads up from anyone who is watching, possibly from Ghost Ship or anyone maybe who created one of these pieces. Whether or not it's okay or not okay, either way, a heads up would be nice because I don't want to step on anyone's toes at all. Obviously, I don't think we are. We're still not monetized. I'm not sure how relevant that is though. But I just wanted to say full credit to the artist. You can see their names here, except I guess except the guy who did the one, this one on the right, where it's just the icon basically. But either way, I hope this is okay. I just thought it's a fun little idea. I don't think it should be too much of a problem. I'm probably worrying for no reason, but just in case it's not okay, I would love to know. I really do want to know, and then I would probably just hide the video if I had to. I wouldn't have too much problem with that. It's not like, uber valuable. I'd rather not, but still, if anyone could let me know if this is okay, that would be really lovely. Also, we do have a small, well, yes, I would say small, but still notable channel update. I'm going to say for the end of the video, which I'm actually glad I can, do this in this video instead of on the main video on Saturday. But it's going to sort of be about that, about the schedule a little bit. So if you're interested in that, you could skip to the end if you wanted to, or just wait till the end. Okay. Anyway, so what this is a below text post in the studio with Mission Control. So it's sort of about Mission Control, the process of recording the character from the art director, Robert. But I think really my job turns to now just letting Aaron take the wheel and I read what he has to say. What would have been really cynical and probably terrible is if I had an AI Mission Control read the post. Obviously, I'm not doing that, but it would be funny to do in private, I suppose. I wouldn't publish that because I am just already reading someone else's basically essay verbatim. But thank you to always Ghost Ship for putting out these cool articles, and especially thank you to Aaron for writing them, and thank you to Robert for being Mission Control. Anyway, let's get into it. Hello, miners. Most of Ghost Ship Games is on summer vacation right now. That's another thing that's worth mentioning. And we're moving into our new office at the end of the month. Things will be a bit quiet around here for a few weeks. In the meanwhile, here's a look behind the scenes. We're going a few months back in time and stepping into the sound studio with Robert Freze, the voice of Mission Control. Enjoy. So yes, they are going to be on summer vacation sort of through to... Their summer vacation's not that long. It usually ends like right at the beginning of August, I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure if we're going to hear any particular news early on. I think, if anything, probably have to wait for October, assuming that there is another On the Horizons broadcast for any real juicy news about Deep Rock, or more specifically Road Core, given that's what's next on the plate. But either way, Ghost Ship are going on summer vacation right now, but this is a lovely leaving note, basically. Mission Control is on air. It's a delightful sunny Tuesday in May, and Mission Control is in the recording booth. The order of the day is recording the voiceover for the Season 5 narrated trailer. We're in the only meeting room in the entire office, which doubles as the makeshift sound studio. In the corner, tucked in a blocky bunker of sound insulation panels, stands Mission Control, or as he's known in real life, Robert Freze, co-founder and art director of Ghost Ship Games. Robert's got his back toward the room, standing in the corner in front of a T-Bone SC600 microphone. A snare of black AV cables pulls at his feet and snakes around the room, covering papers from previous meetings. He strikes a confident wide stance to record, one hand on his hip, the other holding his script up close at face level. I almost said script instead of script. He knits his brow as he speaks and leans back at a slight angle, his deep voice filling the room. Seeing him speak in person feels strange when you're so used to hearing the voice through a gaming headset. You forget it belongs to a real person. Today's recording session for the Season 5 trailer is the last one in this office, which is where Ghost Ship Games has been for the past 5 years. In July, we're moving to a new office with space for a better recording setup. In a technical sense, it'll be a complete upgrade. Better equipment, more room, no sound leaks from people eating lunch outside. Still, it's a bit sad to be leaving this old improvised setup. Slapdash low it may be, it served us well. It's not to say this is Mission Control's last ride, but something about the occasion still feels significant, like moving out of the home where you grew up. So here is Robert in their sort of makeshift studio. Of course, I think if anyone hasn't seen what Robert looks like before, you're probably not surprised that the guy who voices Mission Control looks like this. A very dwarven-looking fellow. Even though we still don't actually know if Mission Control is a dwarf or not, so that's kind of awkward. Microplastics. The man behind Mission Control. Robert might be most widely known as Mission Control, but that's far from his only role at Ghost Ship Games. As it turns out, he never really expected to become Mission Control in the first place. When Ghost Ship Games first started up in 2016, Robert was the team's only artist. Largely self-taught, he was the one responsible for all animation, editing, modelling, character art, and concept art. Now, as Ghost Ship Games Studios art director, he guides projects' overall visual development, involved in both Ghost Ship's own games as well as their publishing projects. So yeah, Robert is a very important part of the Ghost Ship machine. He's one of the founding members, which is why it makes sense that he's involved in publishing. I think all of the founding members are involved in the publishing side, at least a little bit, and it makes sense for Robert. And he's basically responsible for the way that Deep Rock looks. So full credit to him for making one of the most beautiful low poly games I think ever made. And of course, when needed, he's Mission Control. Robert is Danish. Not that you'd necessarily guess it by his accent. I'll be honest, I can tell that I can detect a European accent in Mission Control. His real life speaking voice is pretty much the same as his Mission Control voice. It probably stems from the fact that I loathe the sound of the Danish accent in English, so I'm doing my best to eliminate it, he says. I know it's probably still in there somewhere, but at least it's not at the level of that guy from Gladiator. So basically, what you're hearing in game is just how Robert talks when he's talking in English. It doesn't sound like that when he talks Danish. Although this is something I don't know about Ghost Ship, and it's not important to the development process, but I tend to assume that they develop the game in English. I think they all seem to be fluent in English. I don't know that for certain, but it seems like it would make the most sense. I would assume that they develop the game in primarily English and Danish. Those are the primary two languages. Of course, you look at one of the dev streams that they do pretty much every week. They all talk English pretty much completely fluently. And of course, they welcome someone like Aaron, who is an American, as their content writer. So, safe to assume that they develop in English and Danish, probably on an equal basis. Not sure though, not too important. Robert's role as Mission Control is his first ever foray into voice acting, and you know what, I hope it's not the last. It had always been on his bucket list thanks to an interest he traces back to developing characters during Dungeons and Dragons campaigns in high school. But as he explains, he didn't start working on Deep Rock Galactic expecting to lend his voice to the game. The funny thing about Mission Control is that it was never on purpose for it to be me. We just needed something in a hurry, needed someone to do just whatever. I did maybe 3 different takes, had the voice, and that was good enough, and it just got established as we went with it. Like with so much else in Deep Rock Galactic, and this will work solution grew into a big part of the game's identity. And since those first recordings, Mission Control has found its own identity too. But I must say, Robert, I couldn't really imagine it being a different voice. So it's actually very fortunate that they basically just had to take a guy who was in the office to do Mission Control, because we got one of the best voices and one of the most prominent characters in the game. Really the most prominent character. So I think we're all very lucky that it went the way it did. Okay, Mission Control, the character. If the dwarves have a friend in Deep Rock Galactic, it's Mission Control. Not Loot Bugs, I guess. Not that he's a close friend, of course, but at least he's not management. The initial idea for Mission Control came from Mikkel Martin Peterson, co-founder and game director at Ghost Ship Games. From a game design perspective, Mission Control's job is to direct the action and tell players where to go. Because of DRG's non-linear, occasionally chaotic cave generation, Mikkel felt the need for a foreman role to help explain what's going on and to put everything in context. But Mission Control's personality comes from Robert. I had this vision of a world-weary dude who was kind of bored with his job, trying to lead and steer the dwarves as they went through the same things again and again, he says. Mission Control likes the dwarves well enough, but he's also seen enough of them disappear down in the caves that he tries not to care. I think that explains most people's impression of Mission Control in that he does like the dwarves enough, but he's kind of apathetic to their danger at the same time. I think that really is a very concise way of understanding Mission Control's like personality and perspective on like his job as a character. The very first placeholder for Mission Control's character icon was a professional headshot of Soren Lundgaard, which is really funny, by the way, because Soren absolutely does not look like Mission Control. In fact, I don't know how easily I could find a picture of him. Probably not too hard. Soren Lundgaard. There we go. There he is. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of Mission Control of Ghost Ship, but not of Deep Rock Galactic. But it wasn't long before Robert whipped up some rough character art to put a face to the name, resulting in Mission Control's hexagonal, green-tinted icon you can see in the game today. In that sense, the picture of a self-portrait, which is awesome. I think it makes perfect sense because he's the art director and therefore the most, the oldest artist at Ghost Ship. But the fact that the Mission Control portrait is essentially self-portrait, and also just the fact that it was done by him is really just poetic, I think. Like, how often does a voice actor actually get to create the look of the character they're voicing? I would say not very often. Probably more common now, given you have a lot of examples of animators and artists creating characters that they voice, like Smiling Friends, for example, where the lead animators voice most of the characters. But still, it's really nice. It's a really cool thing. It wasn't long before the placeholder character grew into one of the game's most prominent personalities. I'm really proud of what the character has become and how he contributes to the tone of the game. A lot of DRG's narrative comes out through Mission Control, Robert says. It's up to him to relate the dwarves to relate to the dwarves the severity of the situation. To the dwarves, that danger is never really apparent. They don't care. Bulk detonator approaching? Yeah, cool, shoot it. They're not aware of just how dangerous everything is. I mean, we are, though. And Mission Control doesn't really call out bulk detonators, so that's an interesting statement. But I think the players are aware of the danger, but maybe the dwarves aren't. Mission Control might not be management, but if it's his job to manage, but it is his job to manage. He might not be at the dwarves' level, but he's on their side. He can't save the dwarves from dying, but he knows they're not expendable. And thanks to the DRG community, Mission Control has become a lot more than Mission Control. So we have this collage, it's of course background, just a bunch of great stuff here. This one's a classic. This is actually a SNES thumbnail, I think. And I'm pretty sure that's Homelander, which is interesting. I would say also there's a bit of a difference, a disparity between what people believe Mission Control is species-wise. I would say this one is very much so leaned towards dwarf. So yeah, Mission Control, the meme. When asked about AI versions of Mission Control singing cover songs, Robert takes a deep wincing breath. It's both awesome and terrifying at the same time. When he recorded his first lines in Mission Control, Robert never imagined the many memes the character has spawned since. For him, it's uncanny to hear his own voice, and yet not his own voice, singing an AI cover of Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, but Robert appreciates it in the greater context of people's enthusiasm for Deep Rock Galactic, which that's really what it comes down to. There's no malice in something like that. I think it's just a really funny, amusing part of the community that we sort of do stuff like that sometimes. It's just fun. It's really amazing. I mean, we started from basically nothing with this game. Now at the point where we see people doing cosplays for conventions, getting tattoos, making art and memes and stuff like AI song covers, he says. Regardless of what it is, it's amazing to see how the game inspires all these forms of creative investment. It tells me we're doing something right, and that feels very good. You are doing something right. I think the game inspires a lot of people artistically for a reason, and that's because the game is really good at prodding the brain. And it sort of goes on to talk about a little bit about that here. Deep Rock Galactic doesn't do a whole lot of lore dumping. We prefer to drip feed details and let fans' imaginations fill in the rest. This is by design, and Robert is one of the main forces behind the strategy. Being the voice of Mission Control also tends to make him the primary conduit for these bits and pieces of DRG lore. He also happens to be one of the biggest enjoyers of everything that fans come up with. I'm extremely happy to see how much people care about the little snippets we give out, and how much lore people come up with themselves. That's super cool to me. And I always make a point of reading it and commenting on it if I have the time, he says, which is just wonderful. Although some true lore would be nice in the context of Gaia theory. I think some of us might have certain investment in that. We have a picture of Joachim, the current sound designer at GSG, supervising Robert as he records his lines. Joachim is the new sound designer after Trolls Jorgensen, who we interviewed on the channel. And Joachim has his blessing, and I think a lot of the Season 5 sound design is a result of Joachim, so... or Joachim, I'm obviously I want to pronounce her name right, but I don't 100% know how, so I apologise if I did get it wrong. But so far, done a great job with both the implementation of voice lines and music and sound effects. So well done, and you have our blessing as well. The happy accident of mission control. By the time this story comes out, Ghost Ship Games will be moving into a new, larger office space. The crew's excited for the move, but there's a bittersweet note in saying goodbye to the workspace where this game, including mission control, really grew into its own. The team is hoping to build a proper recording studio in the new office to move away from the jerry-rig setups that we've used so far. As Robert records in his Snapdash studio, he's often interrupted by the creaking floors, rattling mechanical keyboards, and scattered laughter floating in from the office. It might not be a dream setup, but it's been good enough so far. As the old proverb goes, if it's stupid and it works, it ain't stupid. We've always been able to find some kind of little closet we could use for our recording setup. It's always worked, but it's always been kind of janky. Robert says, just like the setup where Robert records, the character of Mission Control was born out of improvisation. You could say Robert himself followed the same pattern, being largely self-taught throughout 20 years in the game industry. If there's a lesson to be had here, it's probably about not overthinking things. If there's one thing being an art director has taught me, it's to combat the artist's inclination towards perfection, he says. There is no perfect, just get it good enough, get it on screen and then fix it later if it needs more detail. If you get it to 80%, the only one that notices the flaws after that is you. And that's true. This isn't really about fix it in post or whatever. It's also just about just accept what works. Perfectionism can often lead to ruin, I think is a lesson here. I think perfectionism can be important, but not true chronic perfectionism. You need to be able to rein it in, I think. And I think a lot of Ghost Ship's work is indicative of that. Soon we'll be in a studio with a more sturdy setup, away from creaking floorboards and clacky keyboards and laughing lunch eaters. But for all the challenges of our slipshod setup, there's still something significant in saying goodbye to the place where Mission Control really found his voice. Given that this is the last recording session ever in his office, the final line Robert records seems like a perfect fit. This is Mission Control, signing off, for Rock and Stone. So there you have it. A really, really nice and slightly touching, in my opinion, Below Decks post. It's very nice and sentimental. It explains the process behind Mission Control's voice. It explains the history behind the voice and how it came to be, and also explains sort of Robert's job as well. And I think that's really good. It tells a story, but it's also very informative and insightful about the process of Ghost Ship, and that so far has been my favourite of these Below Decks posts. I think about, for example, the other most recent one, which was creating Creeps for Rogue Core, where the Hoxie's crawler or the Corespawn crawler was first revealed to us. That's probably still my favourite Below Decks post, but this is a strong contender. Very good job to everyone involved in this, especially Aaron and of course Robert for being Mission Control. You do a fantastic job, and I'm sure you will continue to do so. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you, Ghost Ship, for everything that you do. And now on to the hopefully quick channel update. So, what's happening? I'll keep it brief. Basically, the podcast is becoming tri-weekly. So there'll be a podcast once every 3 weeks. So think of it, 1 week podcast on, next week something else, next week something else, next week podcast, and that will repeat. This is most likely to be temporary, or more likely than not to be temporary. I can't see it actually lasting beyond this year, because of course next year is the year of Rogue Core, and I think we're going to have plenty of discussion topics, but the truth of it is, it's not that there's nothing to talk about with Deep Rock, it's actually more so that there's more other videos to make, especially in the vein of tier lists. And it would very quickly become insipid and potentially even draining to be forced to do over an hour of just pure talking on a broad level about the game once every 2 weeks. We don't have an infinite amount of investment in the game, and we've been doing this very regularly for quite a while. And I want the podcast to remain exclusively focused on the Deep Rock IP, more exclusively on Ghost Ship Games' developed projects for the IP. Obviously, that's something that's already been broken before, but making the podcast less sparse actually allows us to do this more concisely, and it does mean you're actually going to see a bit more of a diversification of content as well, as in, there will be, over time, more non-Deep Rock videos, but they will be miscellaneous videos, they will not be podcasts. The podcast will always be about Deep Rock Galactic, or Rogue Core, or any other game that Ghost Ship develops themselves. So you could see more videos, like Doctor Who videos, for example. I think that will definitely happen, because that's something that we are able to talk about at length very easily, and we haven't talked about it at length as much as we have Deep Rock. So it becomes a little bit harder for Deep Rock. That's gonna go away once we start seeing stuff from Rocore, for example. There'll be plenty of discussion topics to delve into about what we want to see from Rocore on various levels, including design, visuals, enemies, customization, music, art direction, lore, all these kind of things that could be bundled into multiple separate episodes. Of course, there are other miscellaneous things like the season 4 retrospective that we want to do. Next episode, I think, is going to be actually focused on this post, and of course on all the patches that have happened since season 5 launched, and just a bit of reflection on where we're at with the game. Moving into the summer period where we're not going to hear anything from Ghost Ship for at least a few weeks. So you can look forward to that next week, because this week will be a tier list. So you can look forward to that. I'm not going to say exactly what it is right now, but I think it's going to be a pretty good one. So yeah, that's just an update. Podcasts are becoming tri-weekly. That might not be permanent though. That's really the essential. Podcasts becoming temporarily tri-weekly, although for an unspecified amount of time, which means that there will be more miscellaneous videos as well. So and that's it. We're not really going to be taking feedback as kind of like a set in stone decision. But I hope it pans out for the best. And as always, thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to stay on top of everything to do with Deep Rock Galactic and Roll, then please click the bell as well. Once again, thank you, and we'll see you next time.